This Sony A7V is finally here. But is it worth the money? Is it worth the upgrade? Today in this video, I'm going to run you through the specs of the brand new Sony A7V. Unfortunately, there are two downsides to the Sony A7V, things that I wish they would have included that they did not include, and I will obviously cover those in this list. We're going to discuss how it compares to the A7 IV in the most key features, and then we'll discuss if it's worth the upgrade from the A7 IV, worth spending your money on if you already own this camera. Then we'll discuss if it's worth the upgrade from the A7 III, because I know a ton of people are still using this. And then I'll let you know if I'm going to buy it or not. Spend my own money on it. Hey everyone, I'm Cole Caparoon. Thank you for stopping by the Aperture Life for a video. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a published and printed photographer, and I've also got 4 YouTube channels, and I've created well over 400 YouTube videos. So I am the exact target demographic for an actual hybrid camera like the new Sony A7V. Now I'm going to read off the specs of the new Sony A7V, and where it's relevant, tell you how it compares to the A7 IV. So we have the Sony A7 IV body. We have a 33 megapixel partially stacked sensor, which is different because the A7 IV is not stacked or partially stacked. So it is the same resolution, but it is a new sensor. We get full frame 4K 60, which we knew had to be coming. We get 4K 120 in the APS-C crop, so not full frame 4K 120, but we do get 4K 120, which is awesome. It has the same 759-point AI autofocus system from the A1 II, which is Sony's flagship camera. Now we're getting into some fun stuff. It has 16 stops of dynamic range in photo. Now the A7 IV only has just over 14.5 stops, so we're gaining nearly a stop and a half of dynamic range out of the new A7V versus the A7 IV. And for me personally, that's a pretty big deal. I hadn't considered more dynamic range in photos when I was thinking about the A7V, but as a landscape photographer, as someone who shoots outdoor scenes and sometimes harsh lighting, this is a big deal for me. The A7V now has 7.5 stops of IBIS, which the A7 IV only had 5.5 stops. So we get 2 extra stops of IBIS, which is a big deal. Plus we've got the same active stabilization in video mode that the A7 IV has, but then we also get the dynamic active stabilization that the A7 IV did not have, so even more stable shots. We get the same vari-angle tilt and flip out screen from the A9 II, which is one of the best screens out there. I'm super pumped about this, and the screen resolution has doubled over the A7 IV, which is a very needed upgrade. The screen on the A7 IV, not great. Double the resolution is awesome. The dynamic range in video, according to Gerald Undunn's test, which of course he's the GOAT in when it comes to testing these new cameras, go watch his video. I'll put a link to his video down below. According to his dynamic range tests in video, it comes in at 12.5 stops of dynamic range, which is the same as the A7 IV. However, in his video, he discussed that the image is actually a bit sharper and a bit better due to better noise reduction. So same dynamic range in video, but significantly better looking image. Now for one of the biggest changes, and one that I'm the most excited about: drastically improved readout speed and rolling shutter. So the rolling shutter at 4K 30 on the A7V is now 14.1 milliseconds as opposed to 26.1 milliseconds on the A7 IV. The A7 IV is kind of notoriously terrible rolling shutter and jello. And I even said in my A7V predictions video that it needed to have twice as good a performance in rolling shutter. And it's not quite twice as good. Twice as good would be kind of unrealistic, I guess. But 14.1 milliseconds rolling shutter, this is going to be awesome. Colt here from the editing room. There are 2 things that I missed when I was editing this video. One, 30 frames per second in photo, which is a significant improvement over the A7 IV's 10 frames per second. Now, obviously this is great, but what's really interesting is that 30 frames per second combined with the much faster readout speed of the partially stacked sensor makes this a real, actual legitimate option for sports photography now. That's not something that I'm into, but like this is a real option for sports photography. No more warping of the bats if you're shooting baseball or any of that sort of thing. So huge improvement in an entirely new category because the A7 IV was probably not a great sports photography camera. A7V is definitely going to be a great sports photography camera. This includes automotive sports, literally all kinds of fast-moving sports. The new A7V now has the Bion's XR2 chip, which combines the two previous chips with the new AI chip all into a single chip, which is very interesting and does a couple very interesting things. Now, first of all, it gives you 23% better battery life, which means that the A7V should get over 600 shots on a single battery. Now you compare that to pretty much every other camera in the segment, and they're getting like in the 300s. So this is crazy battery life. The more efficient combined chip also means much better heat performance, meaning that the A7V should have basically zero overheating issues in any real world scenarios that we're all actually using it in. Gerald called it the best performing camera when it comes to heating and overheating in 4K 60 that he's ever tested, and that it performed significantly better than a handful of cameras that had fans, which is crazy. They've taken away the USB micro port from the A7V and given it two USB-C ports, one of which is a USB 2 port for, you can do data transfer, but also for power delivery, and the other one is a 10 gigabit per second USB-C port. So what's pretty cool about this is you'll be able to deliver power and transfer or tether. There's a bunch of different use cases that this is great for, but it's just nice to see that USB micro is gone. The A7V gets the 4K 30 webcam option, is where the A7 IV is only 1080 at 30p for webcam. So we get a significantly upgraded camera for streaming, for Twitch, for Zoom calls, whatever you want to do for streaming. That's a significant upgrade from 1080 to 4K. We get the same combo card slots as the A7 IV, and that's a top slot that is CF Express Type A or SD, and a bottom slot that is SD. This has worked just fine for me on the A7 IV. If I know I'm going to be doing fast shooting, I'll put a CF Express card in there, but normally I'm just running two SD cards, and that's been perfectly fine. The A7V now has up to a full 1 second in pre-capture, so that means the camera is always taking photos, and then as soon as you hit the shutter button, it's already captured a full second prior to that at whatever burst rate that you're set to. You're never gonna miss the shot. That's very cool. The A7 IV has no pre-capture of any kind. The second native ISO on the A7V is now 8,000 instead of 3,200 like it is on the A7 IV. I think this is interesting because in Gerald's test, it definitely looked noisier than the A7 IV at 3,200. However, it's significantly brighter at 8,000 ISO versus 3,200 ISO. So interesting choice. I think 8,000 ISO is a very usable range. The FX3 that I'm filming this on, the second native ISO is at 12,800, and it's too bright most of the time. And I often wish that my FX3 had a second native ISO at 8 or 10,000. So I'm pumped that Sony is moving this direction with more reasonable second native ISOs. Now we get the full AI subject detection autofocus from the A1 II, which means full insect and train and bird and human and car and all the different subject detection autofocus modes, and the auto function where it automatically chooses what is best for you. Are you shooting an insect and then you go to shoot a car? It will switch automatically for you. This is going to be fantastic. Okay, the two things that they did not include in the A7V that I wish they would have included is no open gate and no internal RAW recording. Now, RAW recording to me, not that big of a deal. I'm never gonna do it anyway, so absolutely not a deal breaker for me. I do think open gate is kind of a bummer because most of the other cameras in this segment now do open gate. Now, I don't think that open gate is nearly as big of a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. I would still likely hardly ever use it. You get worse rolling shutter, you get worse dynamic range, you get worse image quality. Like, there's a lot of things that you give up to shoot in open gate, but for people who are shooting on anamorphic lenses and for people who want to crop for social media content, it's a nice to have, definitely not a need to have. I think the thing that bums me out is just the fact that it's just literally a firmware situation. There's no reason why the A7V can't shoot open gate. Sony just doesn't want to put it in there for some reason. I find that in principle a bummer, but it's not a deterrent for me buying the camera. So who is this camera for? Is it worth upgrading from the A7 IV? If you really need way better stabilization and the rolling shutter bugged you, then yeah, that's a very worthwhile upgrade. The rolling shutter improvement over the A7 IV is very, very significant. If you are into like automotive photography or landscape photography, the higher dynamic range is a significant improvement. I'm more excited about the higher dynamic range and the stabilization than I think anything else. As a landscape photographer, this is a big deal. So I think if those things are enough to entice you over the A7 IV, then it's probably worth the upgrade. I think if you're still on an A7 III and you're interested at all in buying a new camera, this is a no-brainer. The autofocus is gonna be crazy better. The image quality is gonna be significantly better. The video quality isn't even comparable. The A7 III is still shooting 8-bit. Now, will it be enough for me to upgrade? I said in my A7 V predictions video that it had to have a whole laundry list of things in order for me to consider upgrading. But what's interesting is I did not anticipate the better IBIS or the higher dynamic range in photo. Now, they've pretty much done every other thing that I said needed to happen in order for me to want to upgrade, but they also did the better IBIS and the higher dynamic range in photo. And so, yes, I have already pre-ordered the A7 V. Now, I paid $2,898 for the Sony A7 V. So I believe the A7 IV came out at $2,399, $2,400, I think is what I paid for this. So $500 more, 4-ish years later. That seems reasonable to me. As long as it was under $3,000, I'm okay with that. So be sure to subscribe because I will be doing tons of content on this camera, comparing it to the A7 IV, comparing it to the FX3. I'm going to share every part of my experience in owning this camera with you guys, so don't forget to subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. There are also links in the description down below to pre-order this camera, and for everything else that I use, the lights, the cameras, the lenses, literally everything that I use, those are affiliate links. So if you like this sort of content and you want to help a tiny, tiny YouTube channel out, a tiny brand new YouTube channel out, anytime you guys need any kind of photo gear, cameras, lenses, lights, whatever, jump on any one of my videos and click on any one of the links in the description below. Once you're on the site, you can purchase anything you need, and it really helps me out and costs you nothing extra. So thank you for the support on that, and thank you for watching all the way to the end. I am pretty pumped about this. I'm pumped to actually give this camera a go. So hopefully it'll be here in a week or 2 weeks, and we'll be off to the races. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.